Whether it is for your business brand or your personal brand, the colours that you pick form a crucial part of your visual identity. They are part of your visual language. So today I want to share how to curate a colour palette that feels cohesive, timeless and unmistakably yours. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. My first tip is to mood board your ideas on Pinterest first. Now, if you follow this channel, it should come as no surprise that I love to start with Pinterest. As I have talked about, I see this as the visual component of building my second brain. So Tiago Forte's concept of building a second brain. The idea of capturing information and ideas as they come to you and saving those ideas for your future self when you need them the most. So I treat Pinterest as a place to really explore and build the brand ideas that I have. Create boards and subboards related to your ideal branding and focus on boards being specifically dedicated to colours. So don't just include them in your branding board, but really break those down even further. This will give you an opportunity to really pinpoint the shades that most speak to you, because you will be amazed as to how many there are out there to pick from. It will also give you a chance to explore different colour combinations, so you can get an idea of how different colours are going to feel together and whether they are cohesive enough to be able to integrate into your colour palette. When you do this, a lot of the content on Pinterest is really great at giving you specific hex codes and Pantone codes related to those colours. But make sure that you are also thinking outside of the box of just including colours and colour swatches onto your Pinterest boards, because inspiration for branding should come from multiple sources. So for example, you might take inspiration from photography, from fashion, from food, from lifestyle, from architecture. I even have food packaging and product packaging on my boards as well. It's whatever stands out to me when I am scrolling a platform. I have an emotional reaction to certain things, and I take a moment to really notice that before I pin that onto my boards. I realize that something has really resonated with me for a reason. So there is a little seed that is planted there when that happens, because you are connecting with certain colors for a reason, and you're connecting with the way that that brand has presented itself. And when you think outside of the box in this way, it will also give you a more holistic picture of the way that your color palette can apply in different settings. Now, I also recommend doing this for weeks, if not months, before you actually commit to any color choices. What I have found is that colors that you think you love may unexpectedly tire you. And then on the flip side of that, you may find that there are colors that you have completely overlooked, which suddenly catch your attention. My second tip is to curate your colour palette on Canva. So this is where you start to narrow down all of those preferences to hopefully what will be your top 3 to 7 picks. But how do you decide which colours to include? Now, there is an art to picking what those colours could be to have a really complete, cohesive and usable colour palette. So what you want to start with is having at least 1 to 2 primary core anchor colours. So these are part of the identity of your colour palette. They are the signature colours that appear most often. You also want to make sure that you include 1 to 2 primary neutral colours. So these allow for breathing room for the other colours. Then you can have 1, potentially 2 accent colours that add a hint of personality to your brand. You can then pick 2 to 3 text colours. Now this is if those other colours can't necessarily work well as your text colours, just to ensure that you have colours that are suitable for text. Then ensure that if you need them, you also have 1 to 2 secondary neutral colours. So these are the colours that build the bridge between the other colours without stealing attention. They add layers and they add visual variety to your colours. So for me, picking those secondary neutral colours was really the step that tied everything in together. It really did build that bridge. So one of the last colours that I added to my colour palette after I had picked all of the colours that I thought were much more exciting was this sandstone colour. And while that was not a colour that I initially considered for my palette, it really just helped to connect all of those different colours together, and I've ended up using it so much more than what I thought I would. And the idea of layering is something that is reflected in all types of design. So I've heard this discussed in interior design, for example, where they talk about the difference between a space that feels like something is slightly off versus one that feels really elevated is the layering of the colours. So it's not walking into a space where everything colour-wise feels too perfectly matched. But when you add those layers of colour, it feels a lot more considered and a lot more sophisticated as well. So while I'm using Canva to curate my colour palette, I'm also using the website Coolers at the same time. Now, this was a website that I just Googled and came across and absolutely love. It allows you to refine your color palette, and it really goes into a huge amount of depth for the different shades that you can pick from. So if you find a shade that you like, it will show you plenty of other options that are related to that shade, so you can make sure that you're picking the exact one that works best for your brand. So while I use that at the same time, where I found the magic of my color palette really came to life was when I took the images that most resonated with me from my Pinterest boards that I was creating around colors and inserted them in behind my color palette that I was curating on Canva. This is where I found the magic really happened, because I could see where that inspiration had come from. I could compare the shades and see if I was actually getting them correct, or if I wanted to slightly differ from what I had seen on Pinterest in a subtle way. And I could really make sure that all of what had most resonated with me was coming across in my new color palette. Now, in this episode, I'm talking a lot about curating a color palette and finding the inspiration for that color palette. But if you really want to get into the detail of picking the perfect colors, then I have done another episode that goes into more of the science and the art behind picking colors, and also the meaning behind certain colors. So if you care about color psychology and what certain colors are communicating for you as a part of your visual language, then make sure you check out my previous episode on that topic as well. My next tip is what also helped to really take my color palette to the next level, and that is to co-create your color palette using ChatGPT. Now, this is where I truly became impressed with what she can do with ChatGPT, and treating it like a personal assistant through this process, or like a creative partner through this process. I was really blown away by the level of detail that it could provide regarding colors. If you've ever done any work related to colors, this can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming because of all of the different codes that you can choose from, and making sure that the different colors really do work together. And this is where I thought ChatGPT was just so helpful in this space. So to make the most out of ChatGPT as your creative partner in this process, you want to make sure that it first understands your brand. So give it a little brief as to your brand, what it is that you represent, your tone of voice, what you are trying to achieve, who your target audience is, for example, so that it truly understands the goals that you are trying to achieve through your color palette, and not just necessarily what looks good together. So share the colors that you are considering and invite feedback for those. But definitely do not take whatever the first response is that you get as gold in your color palette. Make sure that you are constantly questioning it, challenging it, playing devil's advocate with the color choices that you are making, because ChatGPT will really work with you to be able to refine this down for you. So what you might start with in that process, if you really collaborate with it is not necessarily what you're going to end up with. It will help you to pick those different shades. It will help you to find what is missing from your color palette to make sure that you can really get that right. And remember to keep updating it as you are making decisions related to this. So if you decide on Canva or through Coolers that you have selected a particular color, then make sure that when you're continuing those conversations with ChatGPT that you actually do tell it that as well. And when you feel like your palette is potentially coming together, then download your palette from Canva and share that into ChatGPT as well. Include those mood board images too if you like, so ChatGPT can get a feel of your brand overall and see how that is resonating and invite its feedback for that. My next tip I am so glad that I thought of in this way, and that is to add emotional resonance to your color palette and to name your colors. Now, as someone who has been in marketing for over a decade and worked in branding for over a decade, I understand that first part really well. I understand the need for emotional resonance when it comes to your color palette. Businesses don't just create brand identities out of thin air or rebrand with no solid foundation. Usually there is symbolic meaning behind what those choices are that they have made in their color palette. Some of that might relate to an element of its history, for example. The part that I really love that I never thought about until recently is to name those colors yourself. So if you go onto Pinterest, for example, you might notice that a lot of colors are given a code and a name. And I think from memory, the Coolers website also does this as well. But what I found resonated the most with me was when I gave those colors a name for myself. So I was picking certain colors for a reason. And when I then gave those colors the name that reflected maybe some of those reasons, it made that overall color palette make more sense. So for example, the accent red that I have in my color palette, which I named lipstick, is inspired by the fact that for many years I wore this accent red lipstick. And even in my very neutral wardrobe, red is often the only color that I have as an accent piece through my wardrobe. I called the tan color sandstone because it reflects some of the stone that we have in our house. I named the Bordeaux inspired color that I had in my color palette Shiraz, which is my absolute favorite drink of choice. And I even named the true white color that I have in my color palette Martini after my favorite cocktail, a dirty martini. And the off-white shade that I had in there as well, I named Parchment after the shade of the paint in our house. And so on with my color palette. But the point is, when it comes to your own color palette, find something that you emotionally connect with. You might choose to go a lot deeper on this as well. So for example, this might be the color that you remember in your grandma's scarf. This might be the color that you most connected with through your childhood. Whatever it is that emotionally connects with you, so that when you find yourself potentially tiring of your color palette, that you understand why you picked those colors to begin with, why they are so unique to you. My next tip is to do a soft launch of your color palette. One of my favorite things about not working for big brands anymore is that when you are representing your own brand, you can potentially, if you are still small, experiment with that a little bit more. So you can, for example, integrate a color in your website and see if that is still working for you in a few weeks' time or a month's time and see how that is feeling. And if you do this in a digital way, it will also give you more flexibility to continue to refine that palette as well. But eventually you want to make sure that you are shipping your work, which is my final tip, and it's inspired by Seth Godin, the absolute marketing guru. And he highlights that sometimes the quest for perfection when it comes to creative work can just be procrastination in disguise. So make sure that you ship your work eventually, because it doesn't count if nobody ever sees it. Thanks so much. Subscribe for more on all things personal branding, and I'll see you in the next episode.